Hi and welcome. The previous video about the Golden Quarry map received a lot of positive feedback. Most of you voted that map guides should have a place on our channel, so today we'll dive into what to do on the Normandy map. By the way, this video will include several strategies I personally use on this map. I'm sure it will be helpful for both beginners and experienced players alike. We start playing as soon as we leave our spawn point. Your opponents will always be behind the windmill, so use it as a reference point to know where to focus your attention. Switch to sniper mode and try to intercept enemies in the F2 sector. Our main objective is to reach this hill alive. Once we're in this position, it means we've passed the most dangerous zone and we're safe from random shots. Now our job is to intercept enemies trying to rush through the flank as quickly as possible. Focus your attention on the houses on the left side of your screen. Stay in this position for 20 to 30 seconds. If no one is pushing us, it's safe to move forward a bit further. Tanks with poor gun depression can still perform well from this position, but as with most standard spots, proper tank positioning is key. Our goal is to secure the G4 sector. From this position, we can deal significant damage to the enemy team and control the exits from their left spawn point. Always double-check what's happening to your left, as enemies often position themselves near these buildings. If you see more than one enemy near these buildings, fall back to the previous position to stop their flank push. There isn't a specific spot where you need to stay. You can maneuver around this field, constantly dealing damage and appearing in different locations to keep the enemy guessing. I try to take out as many enemies as possible from this position, but it's not an ultimate spot. If you're a beginner or not fully confident in your skills, you can skip this position and move straight to the next ones. Tanks with poor gun depression can perform exceptionally well in this position. The low profile of Soviet tanks is perfect for playing in this field, giving your enemies only a couple of seconds to spot you before you disappear. Once you stop seeing enemies through your scope, you can move to the houses on the left. From there, you'll also have a great view and can pick up a few frags. This spot is comfortable only for tanks with good gun depression. Don't stay here too long. Assess the situation, look around, and then move on. Our ultimate goal is to reach the ruined church. This is a relatively safe position that provides an excellent overview of the main routes the enemy uses to advance. Another advantage of this position is that it eliminates any threat from the left side. Even if the enemies try to push you out of this position, you'll have the advantage of elevation. You'll have a clear view of everything happening to your left, while your opponent will have to rely on sound to locate you. Tanks with poor gun depression can still perform well in this position. Remember that you can maneuver along the entire flank, helping your team not only by defending Point C, but also by falling back to assist your allies if enemies break through the city and pin your team near the spawn. By the way, if you're playing a slow tank, there's no need to do anything specific. The strategy remains the same. The only downside is that your chances of getting hit by a random shot at the start are slightly higher than those of faster tanks. Now, I'll show you how I play the right flank. This strategy was featured in one of my previous videos about positions, but I've added another option that I didn't mention before. So even if you've seen this strategy in a past video, this one will still be useful for you. As we move to our position, make sure to keep an eye on the far side of the beach, where fast tanks might try to sneak into the B2 sector. If we let enemies into B2, it will create a major problem for both us and our team. That's why we must gather information on whether anyone made it there or not. If an enemy tank does manage to reach B2, the game will become much harder, and we'll constantly need to keep that threat in mind. At this position, our main tasks are to control the beach and intercept enemies trying to move towards the center of the map near the monument. If we play carefully and avoid mistakes, this position will make us nearly invulnerable. The only spot where we might take unexpected damage is this parapet. The enemy is taking a huge risk when attacking from here, and often our teammates will eliminate them before they can fire at us. Still, you must always remember that this spot is your primary threat. Sometimes the enemy might take up this position and we won't have a good line of sight on them. If you encounter this situation during a battle, all you need to do is perform this maneuver to easily take them out. If you're playing a slow tank as you approach the position, you must monitor this area because a fast enemy tank might already be there. Soviet tanks can also play in this position, but you need to be prepared to die more often due to return fire, which is hard to avoid because of their poor reverse speed. If your team is losing, you can stay here until the end of the battle. This is a very strong defensive position, and with the right skills, you'll be a major problem even for a team that's completely dominating. However, if your teammates turn out to be strong players and are winning, you can switch to offense. Before we begin our offensive, we need to gather some information to avoid getting killed the moment we leave our position. First, we must ensure there are no enemies on the beach. Second, we need to understand what our teammates are doing. We should only move into the attack once at least one of the following conditions is met. A teammate is visible on the mini-map in the area I've marked with a green frame. At least one ally is holding the central position in Sector C4, or one of our allies is playing on this ridge. Once you've confirmed that at least one of these conditions is met, you can move into the offensive. Our task is to take up a position behind this building. From here, we can control the city center, have an excellent view of the beach, monitor enemies moving along the wall, and intercept opponents coming from both sides of these structures. This is a fairly aggressive position, so we need to play with maximum focus to effectively control all the directions the enemy might attack from. The advantage of this position is that it allows you to improve your close quarters combat skills and practice maneuvering within a small area. I have a few tips for playing in this spot that I'd like to share. If you find yourself in a situation where there are too many enemies, you'll need to retreat immediately. If you see more than 2 tanks near these buildings, fall back to these rocks. This isn't the best position for combat, but it will allow you to maintain control of the situation. Fire at enemies advancing along the beach during your retreat, gather intel, and assess the battle. If you hear or spot several enemies in the city center, you can fall back to this slope and engage them from there. However, keep in mind that this position works best for tanks with good gun depression. Also, don't forget that you can always retreat further and return to our starting position if things go really badly for our team. We've covered situations where things don't go according to plan, and now it's time to figure out what to do when everything is going well. From this position, we have 2 options for advancing into the enemy side of the map. The first option is more defensive and works great for tanks with poor gun depression. We need to move along the houses and stop near this building. From here, we get an excellent view of the lower enemy spawn, its exit, and even have a chance to take out enemies at the upper spawn point. There aren't any specific tips or tricks for this spot. Just destroy anything that comes into your sights and have fun. Remember, if too many tanks start pushing you, you can spare the enemy team and fall back to the previous position. The second option for advancing is to move along the wall at the bottom. This approach doesn't work well for Soviet tanks because the position requires a vehicle with good gun depression. From this spot, we have an excellent view of the exits from both enemy spawns and can score a few easy kills. I only move to this position when I'm committed to fighting without retreating. It's either the match ends or my tank gets destroyed. By the way, if your conscience doesn't allow you to engage in spawn camping, simply avoid advancing into the enemy side of the map. Stay at one of the positions I showed earlier instead. Before we move on to analyzing gameplay from the opposite side, let me say a few words. First, I want to thank everyone who watches my videos, leaves feedback, writes comments, provides constructive criticism, and shares suggestions on how I could improve my content. Second, I'm grateful to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. In less than 2 months, the channel has grown from 0 to nearly 3,000 subscribers, and YouTube has started generating income that I'll be saving to upgrade my computer. Thank you so much for your support and the kind words you leave in the comments. I also want to ask you to keep sharing your suggestions so I can continue improving the content on the channel. If it's not too much trouble, please give me feedback on the enemy point of vision segments. Should I keep including them in future videos? Do they help you or do they make it harder to understand what's happening? Once again, thank you for watching, and now let's move on to the opposite side. Playing from this side is much simpler and involves fewer nuances and subtle details you need to know. Just like on the opposite side, our game starts as soon as we leave the spawn point. If you enjoy taking random shots on the move like I do, we'll take this route. There's a chance to score a stylish kill here, but keep in mind that it works both ways. You could also die just seconds into the match. Our goal is to reach Sector G2. By the way, if you're playing a slow tank or don't like random shootouts on the move, use this route to safely reach the position. Once we're at this spot, we'll have a fantastic view of a huge portion of the map. Our main task is to intercept enemies heading to the right, or at the very least gather intel on any opponents using the strategy we discussed at the beginning of this video. This position is great for beginners to practice spotting enemies with binoculars. From here we can control Point C and engage opponents near their spawn. This spot allows you to stay in place all game, dominate Point C, and rack up a solid number of kills. Even if this kind of gameplay isn't your favorite, this position is crucial in matches where there's only one capture point on the map. If your team pushes the enemy hard and you're worried you won't get any kills, we can always move forward to this position. Unfortunately, this map is quite imbalanced for the team starting on the left side. There's an absolutely dominant position I've already shown. It's where I almost always start the match. From there, if my team is winning, I roam my flank and have fun. If we're losing, I hold the defensive position near the church to the very end. Heading to the beach is pointless because it's completely under enemy control. City fights aren't my favorite either. I prefer positions where I can control the map. If you're not a fan of the position I suggested in Sector G2, here's another option I sometimes use. It's located in Sector D3 and might appeal to those who enjoy sniping and controlling narrow passageways. From here, we can intercept tanks heading to Point C and those trying to slip through Sector E5 to flank our teammates at Point B. Here's an important tip. If our team loses Point C and abandons the right flank, you can hunt for kills in Sector F5. Also, don't forget to keep an eye on your left. There's a great view of Sector C4, which almost always has enemies. If you take damage and your tank needs repairs, hide behind this building. While repairing, you can gather intel, check for enemies in Sector C4, and if they're there, you'll already know where to fire at them. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching and take care.